Hello everyone, welcome to Updegree. This is Sujay and I am going to be your instructor for the OpenCV practical course. So in the previous video, we saw what OpenCV is and we also saw the course curriculum for this course. So it's time to get our hands dirty and start setting up our environment. So I am going to be using Ubuntu as my base OS. I am going to be using Ubuntu 1.0 18.0 version, which is the latest Ubuntu release. So I hope all of you are also using the same Ubuntu so that we do not run into any issues regarding the OS or the versions, etc. It will be very easy for you to keep up with what I'm doing if you are also on the same OS as I am. So I am using Ubuntu 18.10 and I will be using the same thing for all my future applications. So the first thing that we need to install is called as Python. So as we already know, Python is a programming language that we are going to be working in and we will be using that. So now all of you might be wondering, wait, Python is already installed. It's already built in Ubuntu, right? So why are we installing it again? So to do that, I would request all of you to open your terminal and type Python --version. As you can see, you might have a different Python version, but it will be 2.7 point something. So the thing is, Ubuntu comes something called as Python version called 2.7. Now this is the system Python version. So now what I'm going to teach you is to install something called as virtual environment, so we do not get into issues such as versioning issues, which I will be explaining in a very short while. Now coming to why I said we will be installing Python on our own is because of this. So let me give you a brief idea about why I said that. So basically, let us consider that this entire thing is our Ubuntu system and Ubuntu has its own Python. This is the system Python. So this is the system Python that we get to see in the terminal when we do Python --version. So if we go to our terminal and we do Python --version, it shows that it's Python 2.7.15. So Python 2.7.15 is the system version, which is this. Now we will be doing a lot of stuff in the Python, and therefore we do not want to touch this system Python. So this system Python will be getting used by a lot of other repositories inside Python itself, also inside Ubuntu itself. Ubuntu has a lot of other modules that might be dependent on this system Python. So therefore what we do is, when we install a separate Python installation inside Ubuntu that is separate from the system Python. So how we do this is we use something called as pyenv. Pyenv is a tool that we will use to install our own custom Python version. So in that case, if this becomes a danger zone, if we break this custom Python somehow, this does not affect the system Python. So in that case, we will keep all the other dependencies safe, so that if we corrupt the system Python, then all the dependencies of Ubuntu will also get corrupted and your Ubuntu might break. So that is why we will install another custom Python installation that is separate from the system Python, so that we do not have any issues with later on if we break the Python version. So thank you for watching this video, and in the next video I will be walking through installation of different Python versions. Hello everyone, welcome to Updegree. This is Sujay and I will be your instructor for the OpenCV practical course. Now I would like everyone to open this website called pyenv. So here you can see the URL. So the URL is https://github.com github.com slash pyenv, which is pyenv slash pyenv. So I will give you guys some time to open this website, which should look something like this. Alright, so now that you guys have opened this website, I would just like you to start reading what it is. So pyenv lets you easily switch between multiple versions of Python. It's simple, unobtrusive, and follows the Unix tradition of single-purpose tools that do one thing well. So what does this mean? So this means that in this diagram that I drew, we can not only have our own custom Python version, we can also have different Python versions. So what does this mean? I can have a Python 2.7 installation here, I can have a Python 3.6 installation here, and they would be both separate. So let me do a cleaner illustration of what I meant. So if you have an Ubuntu, this is your Ubuntu installation, and this is your system Python, which is 2.7. Now what pyenv lets you do is it lets you install multiple versions of Python so that you can have a Python 2.7.14 or another Python version which is, let's say, 3.6.7 or another Python version, let's say 3.7.1. So all of these Python versions will be separate from each other and they will not interact with each other. So if you have a separate Python version, let's say Python 3.7.1, and you are using that to develop and you break something in this does not affect this or more importantly the system Python. So therefore pyenv gives you the ability to install and easily switch between multiple versions of Python. So how do we install this pyenv? There are some things that pyenv does that is important for us to go through. Firstly, pyenv lets you change the global Python version on a per user basis. So this is called as the global Pythons. So the boxes that I have drawn here, since they all reside inside the Ubuntu system itself, they are all called as global Python versions. So what pyenv lets you do is it lets you change the global Python version on a per user basis. It also provides support for per project Python versions. That means for each of the project that you build, you can have a separate Python version just for that project. It also allows you to override the Python version with an environment variable, and it also allows you to search commands for multiple versions of Python at a time. So this will be helpful in test across Python versions with docs. So usually whenever you write any program in Python, you want to make sure that it does not break when it runs with a different Python version. So therefore this tool is usually used for testing across Python versions. Now how do we install this? So let us go to installation. So in the installation, it gives us a lot of steps in order to install it. But there is another very easy installer that is written by a helpful user of pyenv, which we can directly use to directly install in our system. So I would like you guys to go to this URL that can be seen in the video right here. So the URL is https://github.com/pyenv/pyenv/pyenv pyenv-installer. Go ahead and open this website. Alright, so now that we have this website open, let us go down and see what this does. So this tool installs pyenv and friends. So this is a very useful tool for us that makes our lives very simple. So there are some prerequisites. So one thing is, it is important to go through each of this. So in general, compiling your own Python interpreter requires the installation of the appropriate libraries and packages. So the installation wiki provides a list of this for common operating systems. Since we are using Ubuntu, all of these prerequisites will already be in our systems, so we do not have to worry about this. Now what we have to do is we have to execute this command. So what this command tells us is curl this command and pipe it to bash. So we are going to get the file, that is this file, and then we are going to execute it using bash. So let's go ahead and do that. Now once you type this, press enter. I am not going to press enter because I have already installed it and this might cause me some trouble. But you should press enter and it will guide you through the installation process. So if all went according to plan, that is if the installation ran successfully, if you see the logs, you can see something along these lines. So in the end, it would have asked you to add these 3 lines to your .bashrc file. We have to add that to our .bashrc file. Now your .bashrc file will be in your home directory. So if you do a pwd, you should be in /home. So if you do a pwd, you should be in /home/username. Here I will be using Sublime editor. You can use anything such as Gedit or Vim or any other editor that you would like to use. So I will be using Sublime and I will open .bashrc file. Now once I have opened the bashrc file, you can see that the file will look something like this. Now go to the end of the file, scroll down all the way down and add these 3 lines that you saw in the terminal when you installed pyenv. So once you've added the 3 lines to the bashrc file, save it and go back to the terminal and type source.bashrc. Now I am getting an error here because of another shell, but you should not be getting this error. So your source.bashrc should work without throwing any errors. Make sure that source.bashrc does not throw any errors for you before continuing further. So if your source.bashrc work perfectly fine, then it is time for us to test it out. Going back to the terminal, type pyenv versions. So when you type this, you should get something like this, only system. I am getting a lot of versions because I have already installed these versions. For you, it should contain only system. So as you can see, it shows that there is only a system version. I have installed other versions that are separate from system. So what I want you guys to do is install another Python installation. And how do we do that? Let us go back to our documentation. Let's go to installation. Here, as you scroll down, it shows you how to install a new version here. Here we are using pyenv to install 2.7.8, but in our case, we will be installing Python version 3.6.8. So please type pyenv install 3.6.8 and press enter. Now it is going to take a couple of minutes. Now if you were able to install it without any issues, let us now try to change our Python version. Now if you do Python -- version, it is in Python 2.7.15. Now since we just installed Python version 3.6.8, let us change our Python version. Now if I do Python global 3.6.8, it should be pyenv global 3.6.8. Now Python's version should be changed. Now if we do Python -- version, Python is 3.6.8. Now if you just type Python, you are inside the Python interpreter and it says that you are running Python 3.6.8 version. So as you can see, we have successfully changed the version of the Python and kept it separate from the system Python. So in the next video, we will be covering how to install pyenv and OpenCV for our projects. Hello everyone, welcome to Updegree, and this is Sujay. I'll be your instructor for the OpenCV practical course. So in this video, we will be installing pyenv and using it for our projects. So for all our projects, let us create our own folder by going to desktop, and we'll create a folder called OpenCV_projects. Now let us go into OpenCV_projects. Now this is an empty directory, and here we will create something called as a virtual environment. Now in the previous video, we already set up different versions of global Pythons. Now let us set up a virtual environment. Now what exactly are virtual environments? So virtual environments can be defined as this. So let us say we have a base Python installation that we are using for project 1, project 2, and project 3. Now if project 1 requires, let's say, a module 1 of version 0.9.1, and project 2 requires project 1 requires a module 1 of 0.9.1. So your base Python version will have module 1 of 0.9.1. But your project 2 requires the same module of 0.8.0. So there is a mismatch between the requirements of project 2 and project 1, because project 1 requires module 1 of a different version from the project 2, which requires a module of a different version. So now if you say that you are working on project 2 and you overwrite this and you make this, you overwrite this and instead install 1.8.0, your project 1 cannot use it. So as you can see, because of this versioning conflicts between projects, we use something called as virtual environments. So what does virtual environment do? So what virtual environment does is, let's say we have a base Python installation and we have different virtual environments. So you can call this virtual environment 1 and this as virtual environment 2. So we have two different virtual environments that has two separate modules but sharing the same Python. So in the previous case, we had project 1 and project 2, which needed module 1 of version 0.9.1 and this project 2 needed module 1 of 0.8.0. Now what virtual environment does is we can install module 1 of version 0.9.1 here, and we can install this version here. So here module 1 will be 0.9.1 and here module 1 will be 0.8.0. Now these two virtual environments are separate from each other. So project 1 can happily use module 1, which has 0.9.1, without worrying that project 2 needs 0.8.0. Now project 2 can keep using its own virtual environment without worrying about other virtual environments. Now creation of these virtual environments is what we will do now. So now that we have navigated to our directory, the way to create a virtual environment is to use the command python 3-m pyenv and give the name of our virtual environment. So I am going to give the name of OpenCV _virtual _env. So what this does is this creates a new virtual environment called OpenCV _virtual _env and press enter. Now if you do an ls, as you can see, we have created a new OpenCV virtual environment. Now how do we activate this virtual environment? So let's do a source OpenCV _virtual _env /bin/activate. So as you can see here, this shows that we are inside this virtual environment. So we are totally outside the other environments and we are safe. We have created another virtual environment here called as OpenCV _virtual _env. We have created a new virtual environment. Now let us see what are the modules that are installed in this virtual environment. So if you just do a pip list, you can see that there are no other modules that are installed other than the default ones. That means it is an empty virtual environment. So now what we are going to do here is we are going to install OpenCV inside this empty virtual environment. Now in order to install OpenCV, make sure that you are inside the virtual environment. So inside the virtual environment, let us first update the pip that it is asking us to do, which is pip install --upgrade pip. So now that is done, we have to do is pip install OpenCV -python. Now this will install all the dependencies such as NumPy and OpenCV inside this virtual environment. Now if you do a pip list, we can see that it has installed OpenCV and NumPy. So in our virtual environment, what has happened is we have installed OpenCV and NumPy. Now to test that we have actually installed OpenCV and that OpenCV is working perfectly fine, go to your terminal and type Python. Make sure your virtual environment is active and type Python. Now do import CV2 and it should not throw you any error. This should be your output. This shows that your OpenCV was installed properly. So now that we've installed OpenCV, in the next video we will be starting with our first project. So that's it for this video. And if you face any issues, please go back and find out if you've missed any of the steps.